Oh, House Atreides, what would you do next? Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Taylor. Remember this bit? It's a classic bit. You know, we've covered a lot of board games that look like books in the day. In fact, this was our first video. I filmed that so long ago. That was actually on my work phone because it had a better camera than my actual phone at the time. But as you can see, it's always fun to have amongst your books, these are mostly not my books, but amongst your books, a collection of board games. And as you can see here, above them all is this wildly fancy production of Crits and Tricks. That is designed by none other than Pete Wissinger. I hope I said that right, Pete. I'm so sorry. Before we sit down and read this game of Crits and Tricks, I should say, huge grain of salt. I was provided this copy by Inside Up Games, the publisher, who has a Kickstarter out. This is part of that. So even though we're going to cover it and talk about it later, it'll just be initial thoughts because huge grain of salt part 1 and huge grain of salt part 2, the designer Pete is a pal of mine. I actually play tested this game in its various states. So everything I say, take everything with a grain of salt. That out of the way, again, this was part, in fact it says volume 1, if you can see, it's a little shiny, of a Kickstarter that should be out now. It is part of 3 games. One of them is a trick-taking game, Crits and Tricks, and then the other 2 are a lane battler and a hidden movement game, all kind of set in this universe. So as you can see here, the cover is absolutely gorgeous, but there's like hands, throwing, dice, a little bit of the hook. As you can see, as we open it, the hook is all about dice. The trick-taking involves you rolling dice for the rank, and then you can also roll the dice later to change your rank. There's a lot more to it. You'll be completing quests, you'll be kind of playing cards that are the suits, but again, the dice are the ranks. Fascinating stuff. We are going to be teaching it here in a bit, and then afterward, going to be doing initial thoughts, because again, not going to do final thoughts just because I haven't had it too long, but also because of that huge bias. So let's go to the table and I'm going to teach you how to play Crits and Tricks. The deck in Crits and Tricks is going to be suits on the cards. So there's 6 different suits and there are 8 copies each, but also everyone is going to have dice, all with a different number of sides from a D4 to a D20. Here we have the game partially set up for 3 players. So no matter the player count, each player is going to get a player screen, which I just want to highlight here is absolutely amazing. Look at this dude with his dog. But also on the back of each player screen is going to have a helpful player guide for the suit, what wins, like in a rogue suit, the lowest wins, and I just noticed the dog hands. That's hilarious. Also, tie break and some other helpful information. But so players are going to have their player screen up, their dice there, and actually for this teach, I think I'm just going to put the player screens down just so it's a little bit cleaner. Next, we're set up where you're going to have loot in the center of the table, which is weapons and also coins. Then you're going to have some barkeep challenges set off. This is going to be the deck, and how to set up the deck is depending on what game you want to play, you're going to include different suits and then also the bard suit. So the bard suit is actually in every single game, but in a first game, it's actually recommended to use the rogue, the barbarian, and the wizard. So we're going to set aside the druid and the paladin. To finish setting up the deck, you're going to include copies of each of the suits you picked depending on the player count. So at 3 players, you're going to include 8 copies of each suit, and at 4 players, you're going to include 6 copies of each suit. And then after that, once you have the deck, you're going to look at the symbol here for each of the suits that you included, and you're going to want to include all of those symbols for this deck here. So notice that this eyeball, which was on the bard, is included, and all the way down here we have the wizard's brain. And then if it doesn't have one, kind of like if it's just blank there, you'll also include it. So we're going to have this deck set up, and as you can see over here, like deflect, which was on one of the suits that we didn't pick, the paladin, these are going to be removed for this game. Next we're set up is to see who's going to lead the first trick for the first round. So players are going to all take their d20s and simultaneously roll for initiative, and the highest number is going to be the first player. So if you roll any ties, you'll just keep rolling until a leader emerges. Then you're going to shuffle this deck and deal 8 cards to each player. And then after that, players are all going to take all of their dice, including that d20 that they rolled, and roll them behind their screens, and it's going to hide the ranks, and they're also going to have their cards behind their screen. So let's set that up now. After that's set up, players will now get dealt 4 of these task cards, which has this wild skeleton handing them a task. And what these are things like kind of feats they're trying to do, like capture cards in every suit this round, or maybe capture more barbarian cards than any other player for the round. And this is how much they would win if they did that. And so players are going to look at those 4, they're going to pick one, put it behind their screen, and they're not actually going to pass the 3 clockwise. So players are going to draft these. And once everyone has drafted, you'll have some in front of you. You're going to actually choose one to just discard and keep the rest for the round. So let's say they did that and kept these, and these would also go behind their player screens. In the final part of setup, you're going to take the barkeep challenges, shuffle them, and then reveal one. And then players are trying to do one of these, and this is a common goal. So this one says, win tricks equal to the value of one of your dice. We'll put that to the side here. And now the start player is just going to lead to the first trick. So starting off at that first trick, it's this dog player here. They're going to play a card into the trick. And what this will do, so maybe they play this barbarian, this will set the lead suit. So players must follow off of that suit. But before players will play, they must assign a value to that card. So that is the suit that's played, but for the number that's played, a player is going to pick one of their dice and assign it to it. And what's interesting is, depending on that suit that's played, it's going to change what wins a trick. So if we look at this barbarian card here, it says rage. And as you can see here, it's high in the symbol. And even players can look at their player aid here, and it shows you what barbarian it says, highest value. So players want to play high values if they want the trick. So looking at the dice over here for this player, they have a 12, they rolled an 8, a 2 on the D10. Maybe they pick this 12. So they're going to put this on here. So they played a 12 in the barbarian suit. And they could have done a crit ability, but I'll cover that later. Let's just keep this simple. So coming over to this player here, they must follow with barbarian. Interestingly enough, they could play a bard because bards are wild, but we'll cover that later as well. We're just going to follow suit on a barbarian. And since they want to play high, they're going to play their highest number on their D20, which is a 15. And then coming over here to this player, they're going to follow suit with barbarian, and maybe they just play a 7. So since it was a barbarian trick, you are evaluating which number is the highest, so who played the highest card. So it was this player over here. They're going to win that trick. The winner is going to take all of the mercenary cards that were played into the trick and collect it in front of them, but they're not going to collect the die, because the die is also important, like we talked about, for like friendly things or maybe different situations. So players are actually all going to put the die that they played in front of their player screen. So as you can see, now you are kind of learning what dice players have left as you go. But let's get into a little bit more of the spiciness of the game. So coming over here, this player won the trick, so they're going to lead to the next trick. Let's say they wanted to change things up and lead a rogue trick. So rogue is now lowest. So maybe they are actually going to play a 1. They're trying to win a lot of tricks. Coming over to this player here, they played a rogue and they also played a 1. So if the numbers are the same, you actually look at this handy dandy tiebreaker here. It's actually larger die. And then it's later player if it's the same die. So since it was a D4, that's actually a smaller die than this D. Oh, I'm so bad with my Ds when they get back in the middle. I think that's a D10 or D8. Oh, I'm so bad. Anyway, all I do know is that that is bigger than that. So the higher, or the larger die rather, is going to win on the tiebreak. So this player is still winning the tiebreak. So now coming to the dog player, looking at their hand, they actually don't have a rogue in their hand. So they are not able to follow. If you remember, bards are wilds. So this player over here, if they really wanted to be a part of this trick, they could play a bard. It would match the lead suit. And then they could, play a 1 and try to win. It's a later played player, so they actually would win that in that case. But maybe they don't care, and they're just going to play a wizard card. And then maybe they play later, and since they are offsuit, they cannot win the trick. They are sloughing off. And FYI, getting back up here, if this player actually had, a bard and a rogue, they could play the bard instead. So the must follow is interesting because you can also play any of the bards, which are wilds. So then this player would win that trick again. They would collect the cards, move the dice just like normal, and then they would lead to the next trick. And if you lead with a bard, you actually declare what suit it is. So when leading with bard, you could say it's a wizard. So then players must follow on the wizard example. And so maybe coming to this player, they actually do play a bard. And I should have obviously assigned dice before getting to that point. But what's interesting about the wizard is the wizard wins not by high or by low, but actually the wizard is value
equal or closest to 5. So coming over here, this player wins because they do have a 5. This player didn't play 5 and they played maybe a 4. They would still win because 4 is closer than these to 5. So I haven't talked about two huge things in the game, and this right now is a perfect opportunity. So whenever you play a die from behind your screen to be the value of your card, you can always re-roll it once, and then you have to stick with that value. So in this case, maybe this player says, oh, this 2, it's not going to win. I'm going to re-roll it, trying to get closer to a 5, and they do. They got a 4. And since it's a bigger die or a larger die, they actually win this trick now because they re-rolled. So again, you can re-roll a die when you play it exactly once if you want to change its value. Now that we've showed the re-rolling, well, there is one more special surprise, and it's actually in the name. Crits and tricks. Well, we've covered the tricks. Well, oh, that's upside down. Well, the crits in the game are where players can, up to 2 times in the game, reveal one of the cards from their hand and do a crit depending on what card they reveal. So for a majority of them, they have to be done on the player's turn, anytime during the turn, and you can only do it twice, like I said. So there's 8 cards dealt, 6 for tricks, 2 for up to 2. If you don't want to, you don't have to do a crits. Players will just reveal the card, and they will do the ability that is on them. So let's cover what some of the abilities are. They're actually on the back of this player aid. Super helpful. So the Barbarian, you can adjust your die value plus or minus 1, 2, or 3 to min-max things. The Wizard, you can swap your die with one previously played. So maybe in that past example, this person really liked that 15. They could swap that for that 3. Pretty slick, pretty clever, pretty nifty. The Bard, you can re-roll your die up to 2 times. Pretty nice. And finally, remember when I said it always happens on your turn, kind of? Well, the Rogue over here is special. The Rogue is the only one so far that you can play off turns. You can sneak yourself in turn order to go last. You can play that whenever. So those are the abilities. So let's go show an example with the full everything. So you have now rerolling, crits, and tricks. So who won the last one? This person? Yeah. So they are going to lead. So looking at their hand here, they're going to lead Bard. They're going to say it is a rogue trick, so it's low, and they are going to pull out a 2, and then they're going to say, I'm going to use my Barbarian here as its crit ability to lower it to a 1. So they're going to put that out here, and now this is a 1. So now this player, that shouldn't be there. This player over here is now going to play into the trick. So it was a rogue, they're just going to follow suit with a rogue. They have a transmute. They're going to swap with one previously played. So they're going to get this 1 back out here, put that out here, and set that there. So now they've played a 1 and they are currently winning. And then finally this player over here, they're going to play a rogue. They're going to get their largest die, which was a 2, unfortunately, and then they're going to re-roll it. They're trying to get a 1 to finally win a trick. Nope, that'd be great if it happened, but they did roll, they rolled a 19. Trying to cheat. So then now, since it's a tie, larger die, so this player is going to win the trick, and the flow is going to continue. So you're going to do that for 6 total tricks, and then let's look at everything once the dust settles. I should say, before we get to final round scoring, I meant to mention the tasks. Whenever a player completes a task, they will reveal it and earn that much money. So in fact, if this player over here would have done that, because they won the first trick, they could have revealed this, I won the first trick, and then they would have taken 3 coins. Here we are at the end of the round. So players are going to win loot and coins depending on a few things. So first, they're going to get 1 per trick they've won. So this player over here would get 5, and this player over here would get 1. And then they might have quests that resolve at the round end. They're going to reveal them. And then also, they're going to check the barkeeper's challenge. So as you can see over here, this was win tricks equal to a value of 1 of your dice. So this player over here, they took 5 and they actually kind of overshot. Maybe they were going 4-4 and they kind of went too far. This player over here, they took 1, they got 1. So they would also get $3 more. This player over here didn't get 0, they don't have 0, so they did not get any. So then you're going to set up for the next round. You're going to collect all the cards. You're going to discard any of the quests that were completed out of the game. You're going to shuffle and redeal. Players are going to take all their dice and put it back. And there's going to be a few things different. For the second round and on, you're actually not going to roll for initiative. You're actually going to start with the player whose loot is worth the most. They're going to lead the first trick. And if that's tied, players will, I guess, roll for initiative. In round 2, you're actually going to pass quests the opposite way when drafting. And then round 3, you're going to go back that original way. And then at the end of 3 rounds, you're going to see who wins. That's it. Also, in rounds 2 and 3, the player who's losing is actually going to, after they get dealt everything and rolled, they're going to look through these and pick which one they want for everyone to have. So maybe this one is win tricks equal to a value of none of your dice, and they're going to choose that one for that round. And that's how to play crits and tricks. But before we go, let's check out what the Paladin and the Druid do, as you can see here. Well, Druid is second highest, pretty brutal, and Paladin is actually highest value match lead die size. So that's pretty wild. And then the abilities for the crits is you win ties this trick, and then entangle is force another player to re-roll their current die. Brutal. Druids are wild. And so yes, that is now finally how to play crits and tricks. I won't go into full detail for the 2-player and the solo, but the unique things that I will highlight is at 2-player, if you are having date night, you will do mostly similar stuff. The deck makeup will be pretty unique and some things will be removed or not, but the huge main difference is you're not going to draft quests. You're actually going to have them in a line here of about 6 of them, of definitely 6 of them, and then you're going to actually fight over them. So the first person to complete them will just take it from here. So it's actually a bit of a race on completing the quest, and everyone actually knows what, both players know what the other player is going for at the same time. And so that is the fun little twist at 2 players. How to play solo is you are going to be trying to win a certain number of tricks. At the start of solo play, you are going to be rolling a d6, and that is the number of tricks you're trying to win. So in this case, you'd be trying to win 2 tricks. And it's similar trick play, and the goal is you're just trying to match this. If you do, you get 5, and if you don't, you earn 5, but then less 2 for every trick, so you're either over or under. And you're trying to hit a certain score of points. But what you're doing here is you're actually playing kind of like a 2-player against a bot. It's called Drakor. They have a mercenary deck. They are going to reveal the top one. Then you're going to roll all of their unused dice, and you're going to pick the best one for it. So in this case, if they had all these, they would try to pick the best one for this situation, which would be the 1. So if it was the wizard where you're trying to get closest to 5, you'd pick one of these 4. And then you would just continue that. And then you're trying to either win or lose, and you are going to play off of this flipped deck, and then you're trying to hit a certain score. And that's roughly how it works at 1 player, the solo challenge. So that is crits and tricks. And again, huge grain of salt. Pete, the designer, is a pal, and Inside Up sent me this game. So these will just be very loose, very quick first impressions. Just some things that stood out that I really liked, and also a bit of commentary on the production. So this tome of a production is absolutely wild. Look at this. I mean, I again was talking about how 5s and 13 leaves had amazing production. This is wild to see. Like I genuinely keep remembering where trick takings were very few years ago in terms of production, and this is continuously blowing me away. And I love just the attention to detail as well. It still makes me chuckle that when I was mid-teach, I was learning and seeing other details. And actually, so the one I'm specifically talking about is the fact that when you have a player aid, right, they actually, like this one has the dog there. On the back of the player aid, it has the dog's paws. And this was the person's hand. And I actually went back and looked at all of them. Like this player right here has a bandage hand, and their bandage hand is right there. So clever. I think the like charm and the voice of it all comes out really, really well. And the rule book is just, I love this. I talked about 5s and having like a wonderful rule book in there where it's like, it's a little bit more personal. It's like talking to you a little bit with a little, how do I say this? Like a voice that is welcoming and excited. And there's in this rule book, there's like alternative text. And this one right here says like, "Hi newbie, I'm here to help you out. And you owe me a drink later," or something, right? Because, you know, you're at a bar. And this one is really cool because it will cross out certain words that maybe someone doesn't know, like if they're reading this and they don't understand it. Like the word lead, like when you lead a trick, it's crossed out and says start. Or, for example, as you can see, the word trick is explained in that alt text. And they do that throughout. And there's just like a really helpful sense of this was almost like rules written for someone who knows trick taking or someone who can, parse through it, being familiar with trick taking. And then throughout the game, there's just helpful moments of that alt text helping you out, like, oh, leads, cross out, starts. Or just injecting humor, like if you saw in the 2-player that I was showing, it says date night, question mark. There's just like a fun level of detail to it. So sorry for talking so long about it, but I think this game kind of begs the discussion on production. I don't think you ever see this or open this or play with it without talking about it. And I know there's that idea of games that use dice and trick taking in interesting ways. I mean, there's Skulking Dice or Mino Dice, and then there's Nikosu Dice. And I feel like this, in that spectrum, I know the designer had a chat about this, it's somewhere in the middle. So Nikosu Dice is very thinky, very planning, like you have tiered trump and you're trying to work through that. And then Mino Dice is just pretty random and you're just chucking dice, and that one has all these wacky rules that kind of like bounce around, and so that one's just more like a goof time. And then Nikosu Dice is like a pretty, like, I know there's dice in it, but it's pretty like thinky, strategic, wits about you, trick taking game. And this one, it has that element of like, oh, you're strategically planning out things, but you can always just re-roll a die as the value of the card you play. And I think that has that perfect balance of being, tactical, a little goofy, a little fun. Like, I feel like it leans into the theme really, really well, especially when for start player, you're just rolling for initiative. Like, it is very themey, if that makes sense. Like, I know we talk about how trick taking and theme is maybe, sometimes trick taking games just have like a kind of basis on theme, but this one does feel like everything is considering of the theme. Like, the rogues being sneaky and having it be lowest, or barbarians being about strength and having it be the strength. Like, it feels like it was designed very much so with the theme in mind. For the game design, there's nothing bad about a hand. You can always, look at your hand and go, oh wow, I have a lot of rogues, I really want to play low. Or sometimes you don't want to win, sometimes you do want to win, sometimes you're trying to hit a number, sometimes you're trying to slough off. Like, there's quests that'll be good for losing, good for winning. And I feel like this game, with as much, rolling and like embracing of the luck, there is so much to mitigate it. There's so much, there's so many rather avenues to go down if you have a low hand, high hand, or whatever hand you have. And so I think this is such a game of being able to work with what you have and change what you have. I mean, it's wild to think about technically everything you can do in this game. Like, if I just bulleted listed, it's like you're drafting your quests at the start, and then you can re-roll anytime you play a trick. You can choose what you're playing, and then also you can have bards for wilds, and then you also have crits. So it's cool that there's like tons of choice, tons of luck and randomness, and it's all mixed into this melting pot that I personally really enjoy. But again, pizza friend, and this was sent to me, so just just waxing poetic. You do have to be comfortable with randomness. I mean, I think that's inherent in kind of the aesthetic and the design goal. There's a lot of rolling dice. There's a lot of moments of like, you did everything you could to win the trick, and then someone just rolls. Someone at the end will just roll, and they'll win it. And I think that is the vibe of this game. There's a lot of choice, a lot of like thought you can put into things, but then there are just random moments where someone can just eke out a victory by rolling a die. And I think that is kind of the whole game. So I think if that sounds good to you, I think if this sounds interesting. That's some thoughts on the game. That was Crits and Tricks. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely check it out. The Kickstarter link is in the description. I think if you love tons of things you can do, a lot of modular abilities, and just rolling dice, chucking dice, having a good time, I think you'll like it. Thanks so much for watching, and happy Trick-Takey-wary.